Shocking truth about ancient Egypt's unbelievable junk food, you won't believe this. In the heart of Cairo, the sun hung low, casting a golden hue over the ancient pyramids, but beneath those majestic stones lay secrets that would make your skin crawl. You see, ancient Egyptians, those scientific and mystical geniuses, didn't munch on barley bread or scale the Nile for fish. No, they indulged in things that would make your stomach churn with confusion: deep-fried insects, oily pastries stuffed with mysterious concoctions, and sweet treats made from honey that could rival any modern-day candy bar in richness. Imagine a bustling market, the scent of spices heavy in the air, as merchants hawked their bizarre delicacies with enticing shouts. Can you picture it? Children giggling in the shadows of colossal statues, their tiny hands tightly clutching chunks of crispy, fried locust snacks that would make most modern diets cringe. As a passerby, you'd hear the sizzling of meat skewers and feel the warm breeze sparking intrigue. But wait. What is that? A mouth-watering pastry, glazed to a glossy perfection, filled with a mixture so delightful it almost seems illegal. You'd expect to find such a cheat day snack today, not in a land rich with history and civilization, but there's more to this story than meets the eye. A hidden, chilling truth lurked in those picturesque streets. These ancient treats were not merely junk food, they held the power to bind the living and the dead. According to whispers in hushed corners, the spices used in those sweet dishes were linked to rituals of the afterlife, food not just for the body, but for the soul. What kind of power could bind a grave's chill with a warm pastry? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The crowd begins to disperse, a murmur of intrigue rippling through the faces of the locals. Some cast cautious glances towards an old vendor, a hunched figure draped in tattered cloth, who always sells the strangest items. His wares seem otherworldly. Curiously, what's in those jars? Why do people whisper conspiratorially about the tantalizing flavors that linger even after the last crumb? What if this was more than just a culinary adventure? What if those sweets held the key to unlocking secrets long buried beneath the sands of time? One brave soul might dare to taste them next. But who? And what truths will they uncover? As the sun dipped below the horizon, a sense of urgency replaced the earlier jovial excitement in the market. Curious onlookers turned their attention back to the old vendor, who had just begun to shuffle closer, dragging a heavy cart packed with jars that joined shadows against the red evening sky. His eyes sparkled with a wild intensity, and though he looked ancient, there was an energy in him that suggested experience both vast and unsettling. People exchanged wary glances, their interest piqued by the thickening air around the stall. What hidden horrors or delights could lie within those dusty glass containers? A woman named Layla, driven by an insatiable curiosity, stepped forward. With each step, she felt an odd thrill build up in her chest. Perhaps it was her sense of adventure, or perhaps a pull from something deeper. As she neared, the whispered rumors of the food's otherworldly abilities echoed in her mind. What's in those jars? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The vendor's lips curled into a knowing grin. He leaned forward, the weight of countless secrets evident in his gaze. Ah, my dear, treasures of the afterlife, flavors crafted to awaken spirits long silent. Would you dare to taste? Layla hesitated, her heart thudding like a war drum. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. After all, how often does someone get a chance to uncover ancient secrets resurrected through food? Ignoring the chill that crept down her spine, she nodded. The vendor retrieved a jar, its contents shimmering under the last remnants of sunlight. Inside was a vibrant mix of herbs, spices, and what could only be described as jewels of color. He dipped a small spoon into the jar, pulling out a dollop of an unknown mixture before presenting it to her, eyes twinkling with anticipation. "Take a taste. But beware," he cautioned, his voice dropping to a grave tone. "The line between life and death is thin. This could illuminate the shadows of the past or bind you to them forever." Time seemed to pause as she took the spoon from him, her hands trembling. The aroma filled her senses, sweet and spicy yet carrying an unmistakable earthiness. It mirrored the market, alive, rich, and raw. The crowd around her leaned in, breaths collectively held as she brought the mixture to her lips. The taste exploded in her mouth, an enchanting blend of flavors. For an instant, Layla felt weightless, as if the very air around her had reversed its pull. What was happening? Eyes widened in disbelief, she could almost feel the presence of something beyond the veil of the living world stirring awake within her. Suddenly, a sharp gasp broke the tension. A man at the back of the crowd staggered backward, crashing into a nearby table, sending jars and pastries tumbling to the ground. "She has awakened them. She has awakened them all," he cried, panic rolling through the crowd like a feral wave. Fear dripped from every face as shadows stretched across the cobbled street. Layla's heart pounded furiously. What had she unleashed? As whispers turned to frantic discussions, she stood frozen amidst the chaos, the warmth of the vendor's gaze heavy upon her back. "Do you see now?" he murmured, low and penetrating. "You've tasted the past and awakened its fury. The dead, they are hungry. What would come next?" The whispers of the past were no longer hushed. They were breaking free, wanting to be heard, demanding to take their rightful place in the world of the living. Layla's mind raced as the crowd's energy shifted, fear mixed with excitement. Was this just the beginning? Who or what would answer back? The shadows curled closer, a promise of revelations and dangers lurking just out of sight. And as the last remnants of daylight vanished, Layla realized she had crossed a line. One that could lead to haunting discoveries or even worse endings. What was she prepared to face? The very core of an ancient mystery awaited her next move, and she had no idea what it required. The air crackled with tension as the man's panicked words began to sink in. "She has awakened them all," echoed in Layla's mind, slamming into her like an icy wave. For a second, she stood frozen, caught between worlds, the real and the supernatural, the living and the dead. Around her, whispers started swirling like a tempest, rising to a fever pitch. "What does he mean?" someone hissed from the crowd, eyes wide with dread. Others shrank back, faces hardened with fear and eyes darting around, searching for signs of a ghost breaking free from the shadows. Layla glanced at the vendor, whose calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the tension radiating from the crowd. A pit formed in her stomach. She didn't just want to uncover ancient secrets, she had clearly tapped into something much darker. The warm blend still danced on her tongue, but now it felt more like poison than magic. Then cries erupted from the far side of the market. A figure staggered through the crowd, a young man, eyes wild and haunted. He clutched his head, and his skin was ashen. "They're here. You've brought them back," he screamed, his voice a desperate note of madness. At that moment, the jars on the vendor's cart shifted. A chilling wind swept through the market, sending a shiver down Layla's spine. The glass containers rattled in response, as if the spirits trapped within were stirring. The once vibrant colors of the jars dimmed, twisting into darker shades that seemed alive with menace. Layla felt trapped, a moth drawn to a flame. She had sought adventure, but now it reeked of dread. "What have I done?" Her heart raced. Desperation clawed at her. "Do not fear, dear," the vendor's voice was serene, yet laden with an unspoken threat. "You've unleashed what was always there. A taste is just the beginning. You must learn to control it, or it will control you." His gaze bore into hers, a gaze that promised knowledge and peril in equal measure. Layla felt the weight of his words suffocating her. Control. How could she control what she didn't understand? The shadows crept colder, wrapping around her like fog. Another figure emerged from the dimness, a woman, ethereal and flickering like a candle. Her eyes held sorrow and rage. Awakened, she echoed, her voice like gravel on broken glass, but not welcomed. We do not wish for resurrection. We desire closure. The market fell silent, every face watching with horror as the woman stepped closer, her form shimmering, flickering in and out like a glitch in reality. Layla's body felt rooted to the ground, yet her mind raced. Was someone reaching back to her, longing for something? Who are you? Layla managed to whisper, fighting against the instinct to flee. I am a remnant, the woman replied, her tone both mournful and commanding. And you have broken the seal that held the echoes of our pain. It is not merely knowledge you must seek, it is redemption and understanding. You owe it to those who have suffered. Around them, the crowd gasped, murmurs breaking the silence once more. Layla sensed the weight of judgment hanging in the air, as if every eye blamed her for the calamity unfurling before them. In that moment, she realized the spirits weren't just angry, they longed for someone to listen, to learn, and perhaps to heal. A shiver clawed at her spine. The task ahead loomed larger than she ever imagined. The flavor had lit a fire within her, igniting past sorrows that begged for release. Redemption? She echoed, floating without comprehension. How could I possibly seek it? The woman's form flickered brighter, illuminating the darkness around them. You must look within yourself and the jar that holds the truth, and the hunger for justice. Layla felt called to that jar. Each tick of her heart pushed her closer to the resolution she couldn't yet comprehend. But what awaited? Would it be salvation, or a deeper curse? The night was far from over, and as spirits began swirling around her, their chilling whispers filled the air, chilling her to the bone. Layla took a step forward, trembling but defiant. What truths lay hidden within those jars? And would she have the courage to confront them? The woman's gleaming presence faded for just a moment, like a flicker of hope in an encroaching darkness. Layla's heart thudded loudly against her ribs, drowning out the murmurs of the terrified crowd. I must do this, she told herself, her voice barely a whisper amidst the chaos. The air thickened, charged with a palpable energy. She stepped closer to the vendor's cart, the jars gleaming ominously in the half-light. Each one seemed to pulse rhythmically, beat by beat, like a dying heart. They demanded her attention, urging her forward. The shadows writhing around her felt alive, teasing the edges of her consciousness with their cold fingers. What do you seek? The vendor's voice vibrated in her ears, warm and sinister. He stepped aside, a subtle invitation to step deeper into the unknown. Layla hesitated, fear bubbling in her throat. I need to know the truth. A grin split the vendor's face, and his eyes sparkled with a knowing darkness. Then choose wisely. One jar reveals, while others will consume. Squinting, Layla stared into the jars, each emanating a different hue, from deep crimson to sickly green. One jar, adorned with intricate designs that looked almost alive, drew her in like a moth to flame. It seemed to call her name. As she reached for it, a sudden howl pierced the air, a specter flaring up from the depths of the darkness. Do not! Cried the young man who had first staggered into the market, his voice cracking with desperation. You don't understand what you're doing. The crowd gasped, pressing back, eyes wide with fear. The young man lunged toward her, grabbing her wrist, his grip burning hot. Those spirits are angry. Once opened, they won't go back. She could see his own fear mirrored in the crowd. Yet, despite the heat of his grip, a part of her felt drawn to the jar, as if it were the key to unhinging the door of her own hidden mysteries. Layla's mind reeled. The remnant's words rang in her ears: redemption, closure, understanding. What if this jar held the truth about the suffering tied to her past? Perhaps her own trying experience made her the perfect candidate to guide their pain into peace. Let me go. She snapped, pulling her wrist free. The flickering woman shimmered before her eyes again, urging her forward. With a sudden surge of courage, Layla seized the jar. It felt cool against her palm, radiant despite the darkness engulfing them. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of long-buried secrets clamoring for her attention. As she twisted the lid, a hiss escaped, like a breath from the grave. An icy wind erupted from the jar, wrapping around her. In that moment, vivid images flared in her mind, shadows of lives unlived, of pain that had not been given its voice. A figure loomed in the whirlwind of the past, an anguished face she recognized. Mom. A wave of horror crashed over her. Could it be? The room spun, and she staggered back, losing her grip on the jar. It crashed to the ground, shattering into 1,000 glittering shards. Not like this. The vendor roared, his voice laced with fury, but it was too late. From the fragments, whispers surged forth, swirling together to form shapes in the dim light. Layla dropped to her knees, gripping her head as reality twisted and bent around her. The spirits were no longer contained, they were free. Layla. A voice thundered, and she looked up to see the spectral woman and the young man beside her, their forms solidifying. But the other souls were taking shape, two faces twisted in sorrow and rage, all directed towards her. What have you unleashed? The young man moaned, collapsing in despair. A flood of tears erupted from Layla, each drop filled with regret. I wanted to help. I thought now the time for help is over, the woman interrupted, her face a tempest of anguish. You opened the window, but can you bear the storm? Layla's breath hitched in her throat. The rush of spirits encircled her, a blend of anger, sorrow, and was it desperation? A shattering scream erupted through the air, silencing everything. The realization crashed down on her. There would be no easy escape. With her heart racing wildly, she stuttered a question that held the weight of the world. What do you want from me? The shadows loomed closer, swirling with mounting urgency, their whispers flooding her mind. Redemption, understanding, justice. The crowd had driven back, terror mingling with compassion. What was she supposed to do now? Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of resilience flared to life. Could she mend what had been broken? Could she face the storm, the haunting shadows of her past? Just then, a loud crash echoed through the alleyway, spiraling her pulse into a frenzy. What now awaited her in the darkness? Layla. The young man pleaded, clawing for her attention. We need to act fast, or we'll lose them forever. The question loomed larger than life, ensnaring her in its unrelenting grasp. Would she sink into despair, or could she be the one to weave the path toward redemption? The swirling spirits closed in on Layla, their faces contorting with emotions that twisted her stomach into knots. The weight of their sorrow pressed down on her, a tangible force that threatened to crush what little resolve she had. She could feel her heart hammering, a wild drum echoing in her ears, drowning out the chaos around her. Listen to them. The spectral woman shouted, her voice breaking through the din, urgent and fierce. You have to understand their pain if you want to find a way to help them. Layla's eyes darted between the angered souls and the terrified crowd, who now watched, mesmerized yet horrified. The energy crackling in the air felt electric, and she knew she had to act, but what would that even mean? Who are they? She gasped, desperate for clarity among the chaos. They are the echoes of wrongs, the victims of neglect, the woman explained, her form shimmering as if reality itself struggled to hold her. Their stories demand to be heard, their memories yearning for release. The young man pressed his hands against his temples, his features twisted in distress. You must connect with them. Feel what they felt. Only then can you free them. Breathless, Layla searched the spirits' faces, each one reflecting untold stories of loss and despair. She closed her eyes, focusing on the storm of emotions swirling around her. As she steadied her racing heart, the shocking reality pierced through her mind. These souls were tied to the jar she had shattered. Her foolish desire for knowledge had released them, but perhaps it was also the path to their salvation. Okay, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I'll listen. Opening herself to the swirling memories, Layla felt the icy grip of despair wrap around her. Images flooded in, a mother pleading for help, a child crying in the dark, a figure cloaked in shadows holding a dagger. The pain was visceral, clawing at her insides, and she gasped as she staggered back, struggling to breathe. "Leave it with us," the spectral woman urged, a light igniting in her eyes. "You have to embrace their suffering. Only then may you find a way to bring peace." Layla dug deep, planting her feet firmly on the ground. She visualized those shadows around her, letting their anguish enter her soul. "I feel you," she whispered, the words a mantra through her tears. "I will not turn away. I will help you find peace." The cacophony of voices rose in intensity, crying out in a unison of pain that echoed through her being. She gasped, stumbling into a vision where she found herself in a war-torn world, each moment filled with loss. A battle raged around her as shadows fought, some dragged into darkness while others were pulled back into the light. Layla fell to her knees, gritting her teeth against the overwhelming tide of sorrow. "Please," she cried, "what do you need from me?" A silence eclipsed the chaos, and Layla felt a shift among the spirits as they paused, their yearning morphing into something more profound, a hope of closure. "Justice." A voice boomed from the depths, a deep tremor of authority that resonated within her. "Unravel the truth of our past and set us free." The gravity of those words struck her like a bolt of lightning. They were not just seeking solace, they needed her to unveil the darkness that bound them. Just as her heart surged with understanding, the air ignited with a burst of icy wind, slamming into her like a tidal wave. Layla gasped and struggled against the force, every breath burning her lungs. From the whirlwind of shadows, she glimpsed a figure she recognized amid the chaos, her mother, ethereal yet vivid, reaching out with a stricken expression. "Mom!" Layla screamed, but the wind howled louder, drowning her out. "I in the fray." She caught the young man's pleading gaze. He shouted something, but his words were lost in the crescendo of chaos surging around them. Layla's pulse quickened. Was this her past unfurling before her? What truth had she stumbled onto, and could she face what she might uncover? "Layla, focus!" the young man yelled, urgency lacing his tone. "You have to remember. It all started with a crack of thunder rang through the night. The very shadows began to ripple, dark visages forming a vortex that threatened to awaken something sinister deep within the darkness. "Stay strong," the spectral woman urged, her luminous form flickering. "You must not falter." Terror washed over her. Would the truth they sought come at a price too steep? With mounting dread, Layla braced herself, but how could she even begin unraveling a history buried in so much pain? As she faced the storm, a question roared in her mind: what if it leads her down a path she could never come back from? Would she discover what she sought, or would the shadows consume her? The wind howled like a fractured soul, tearing through Layla's mind. She felt threads of the past interweaving painfully with her reality. Her heart raced as memories surged, unbidden fragments of her mother's laughter, the sweet scent of cinnamon wafting from their kitchen, and then the shadowy horror that eclipsed it all. A name whispered through the chaos, dancing just beyond her grasp. "Layla!" The young man shouted again, desperation carving his features deeply. "Trust yourself. You have the strength." The spirits swirled around her, forming a tempest of anguish. Each face was a window into despair, one angry, one sorrowful, another nodding her chest with a strange familiarity. Then she remembered the stories her mother used to tell. Tales of betrayal and loss, echoing of ancient injustices. Hadn't her mother always said that to understand the present, you had to reckon with the past? "Balance!" Layla yelled against the raging wind, seizing the memory. "I have to bring balance." Suddenly, a piercing scream pierced through the cacophony, the kind that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She spun around to see a soul, cloaked in shadows, convulsing as if caught in a terrible agony. The figure reached toward her, eyes wide with horror. It was a mirror of the fear that churned inside her, the sharp pang of unresolved guilt. "Help me!" it wailed. "Release us! Unravel the truth!" Knees shaking, she felt the ground shift beneath her as the storm intensified. Pulses of energy arced through her, taking root and growing with staggering urgency. Together. She gasped, closing her eyes and grasping at the pain around her. You can't be lost if you're remembered. I will listen. Tell me your stories. The air crackled, fiery shards of anguish exploding around her like shrapnel. The voices merged into a symphony of chaos as layers of memories flooded her mind. She struggled to separate each tale, each injustice that had led to their torment: a village burned to ash, a woman betrayed by those she trusted, the echoes of threats spoken in the cover of night. The Shadow Bridge. A breathy gasp rose up from the crowd. Cross it. Free us before it's too late. Layla's heart pounded. What did that mean? With each heartbeat, she felt the pressure building. A revealing symphony danced in her head, weaving threads of an ancient narrative: the bridge that connected lives lost with the lives of those still living. Do it! Urged the spectral woman, a flickering image of determination sparking through her essence. You hold the key, Layla. Focus, Layla murmured to herself, reaching deeper into the spiraling energy. She could feel her mother's presence brushing against her thoughts, urging her on, steadying her resolve. I can't turn away now. I want to let you go. The shadows howled with a new intensity, and as she pressed on, Layla felt a cold yet comforting embrace, as if the spirits were surrounding her with an understanding fervor. She opened her eyes, seeing them all, the angry, the sad, the confused. Each pair of eyes reflected hurts that demanded recognition. Speak! Layla shouted, her voice laced with fierce determination. Let the world know the truths buried beneath your pain. I will carry it with me. As she let the words pour from her in desperate urgency, she felt the ground tremble almost in response. The whirlwind of shadows grew still, and with a deep breath, she raised her arms to draw them in. The air shimmered, thick with anticipation. Then came a loud crack, and the veils of darkness erupted into a stream of light, filling the void with whispers of freedom aching to be born. But just as she began to see flickers of hope, shadows receded, revealing something monstrous lurking behind. What is that? A voice echoed from the crowd, filled with dread. A dark figure coalesced out of the swirling void, a manifestation of the very horror that had chained these souls. A chilling realization struck Layla. This entity wasn't just a part of the darkness. It was connected to her. Layla, the shadows rasped. You crossed the line, and you will bear the consequences. She felt her heart stop as the realization sank in. What had she unleashed? It was more than just spirits, it was a reckoning that would change everything. As the darkness shifted, threatening to engulf her entirely, Layla knew there was no turning back. Would she be strong enough to face this entity? Could she truly bring justice to those who reached out for her? Time slipped away, and with it, a question brewed: would unraveling the past save her or doom them all? The figure before Layla pulsated with a malevolent energy, twisting and writhing like a live wire in a storm. Shadows danced around it, obscuring every feature, but she could feel its gaze boring into her, piercing through the shroud of chaos and confrontation. Look at what you've awakened. It growled, each word dripping with centuries-old contempt. You think you control the thread of past and future? Ignorance will be your undoing. Her breath caught in her throat as she felt the weight of its words. This entity didn't just embody the pain of lost souls, it seemed to thrive on the darkness woven into her very existence. Her heart thundered in her chest. What had she unleashed? Suddenly, the spirits surrounding her began floating upward, their faces twisted in horror as they reached out toward her. No! Don't leave us! They cried, their voices overlapping, rising like a high-pitched hum. Your past is your anchor, Layla. The young man shouted, desperation etched across his features. You have to remember who you are. You can't let it consume you. With the shadows closing in, Layla gritted her teeth, forcing herself to remember her mother's tales, the stories of strength, not just the tragedies but the triumphs too. Each fragment reignited a spark within her, reminding her that she was not alone. "I know you!" Layla yelled, her voice fierce and vibrant, cutting through the darkness. "You think I'm afraid? I carry your stories with me. You won't drown in despair." The shadows enveloped her, thick and suffocating, but in her mind, she saw flashes of light, the faces of the spirits, twisting in agony, yearning for release, yes, but also brimming with hope. That flicker sparked something deep inside her, fueled by the memories and the stories waiting to be told. "Together!" she shouted, reaching out to each soul in the gloom. "I will remember. You will be heard." The air crackled, alive with energy, and in that moment, she felt the warmth of unity, a bond that transcended fear. The darkness wriggled against it, resisting, but suddenly the shadows began to peel away, exposing glimpses of the entity's true form, a mass of sorrow and bitterness molded into horrifying shapes. "You think you can unravel the past? You are a fool." It hissed as segments of it began to break away, revealing the warped features twisted in rage. "The truth does not set you free, it binds you." A wave of dread washed over her as she took a shaky step forward. "Then let the truth bind us." As her words rang out, she felt the whispers of spirits rise, circling around her like a cyclone, righteous anger sparking their power. They recognized her resolve, and their collective strength surged through her. "Help me, then," she cried, her voice resonating with the weight of their stories. "Together, we can confront this." Then, the shadows shrieked a spine-chilling sound that made the ground tremble. Layla braced herself against the tremor, her heart hammering as she guided the energy. Each soul united under her call, drawing strength from one another, they surged forward against the darkness. The figure shrieked, the sound reverberating ominously as the swirling mass began to collapse in on itself. It flared wildly, a desperate attempt to maintain control, fighting against the tide of reckoning Layla had ignited. "Not like this. I will not be forgotten." It howled, resonating with a fury that sent chills crawling up her spine. "Then tell your story," Layla shouted, summoning every ounce of courage. "We will remember you." In a moment of terrifying stillness, the world around her hung suspended. Layla felt the pulse of life return, the warmth of hope igniting a fire within her. She pushed deeper, striving against the shadows that clawed at her, but the entity snarled, the darkness twisting again, wrapping around her, squeezing tighter. Just before she lost her breath, she spotted a glimmer, a sphere of light emerging from the chaos, tethered to the shadows. Was it the key? Could they finally release the hold of the past? The surrounding spirits surged toward it, racing against time. Layla could feel the tension, the desperation mounting. As she reached out to grasp it, a question loomed heavy in the air: would this light be the salvation they sought, or would it plunge them deeper into the abyss? Time was slipping away, and Layla had to decide if she'd risk it all for an uncertain chance at freedom. The sphere of light pulsated like a heartbeat, drawing Layla closer, each pulse resonating with the whispers of desperate spirits. Its brilliance contrasted sharply with the oppressive darkness that wrapped around her, and despite her fear, a sense of hope began to unfurl within her. Just a little closer, she urged herself, stretching her fingers toward the orb. The moment her skin brushed against its surface, a wave of warmth surged through her, cutting through the suffocating dread. She felt the energy spike, igniting every cell in her body. In that instant, the shadows recoiled, screeching like wounded banshees. "No!" the entity howled, the rage in its voice twisting like knives in the cool night air. "You do not control this. You are merely a vessel of memory. You cannot change what is meant to be." But Layla was resolute, the thoughts of the lost souls swirling in her mind, their pain shifting to strength. "I refuse to be your pawn," she shouted, her voice steady and loud. "I will rewrite this story. We will be more than echoes." As she gripped the glowing sphere, she felt the collective force of the spirits converging upon it, their energies mixing into a brilliant blast that shook the very ground beneath her. The light surged, brighter than anything she had ever seen, illuminating the twisted forms of the entity, revealing its grotesque features dripping with sorrow. "Face it!" she cried, pushing back against the weight of its shadows. "This is your moment. You cannot hide anymore." The figure shrieked again, a sound that pierced her very soul, but Layla pressed on. "Let them see you. Let me hear your truth." Suddenly, the connection sparked like a live wire. Memories rushed forth, visions of ancient rituals, laughter, and sorrows passed down through generations. Whispers of love, betrayal, redemption, all coalescing into a tapestry of existence that was painfully beautiful. The spirits surged through her, reviving the history lost in darkness. She was a bridge, a vessel, and it filled her with unstoppable fervor, but the entity's rage swelled, its form morphing, warping into an embodiment of every dark tale, a champion of despair. "You think you can control me? You're feeble." It screamed, and its shadows flared violently, trying to erase her connection to the light. Time began to curl back in on itself, each heartbeat echoing like a countdown. Desperation clawed at Layla, but she refused to yield. "No, we will not go back. Together, we rise. Together, we are stronger." With that affirmation, she drew on everything: the love from her mother, the longing from the spirits, the pride forged in moments of survival. The sphere exploded in a brilliant flash, morphing into a net of light, unraveling the suffocating darkness encasing them. She weaved through it like a dancer, each step guided by connection and truth. "Feel the power of your stories," Layla urged, the walls around her trembling. She could sense the entity's loss of control. Anger twisted its form even further, but then, an icy dread settled in her stomach. The entity shifted, its multitude of forms coalescing again. "You cannot free what was forged in despair. You have merely bought time." A chilling silence fell as the shadows retreated, revealing a path forward, but with it came an unsettling thought: was the light truly their salvation, or merely a temporary reprieve? Just then, the air crackled ominously. A new force began to weave into the darkness, something far older, lurking within the recesses of their shared past. Layla's heart raced. What else was hidden? What truths would emerge to challenge her resolve? Time hung heavy in the balance. Her next move could change everything. Would she embrace what came next, or risk losing the light forever? The darkness shifted wildly, as if it were a living entity responding to Layla's bravery. It wrapped around her, thick and suffocating, but she pushed forward, determined. Her heart thudded against her ribcage, each beat a reminder of the life she fought to protect. The shadows swirled, swirling like a tempest, casting chaotic shapes against the glimmering sphere. "Show yourself," Layla shouted, her voice cutting through the fear like a knife. "I will not be silenced." With every word, she felt the energy of the spirits bolstering her, pouring into her. Their pain transformed into a flickering flame of empowerment. She focused on the orb, its luminescence rippling in response to her resolve. But as she stood tall, the energy in the air thickened, and she sensed a darker presence lurking within the folds of shadow. Suddenly, the entity forced a surge of energy towards her, a wave of overwhelming despair, heavy and bitter. It crashed over her like a tidal wave, knocking the breath from her lungs. The world blurred for a moment, filled with visions of pain and sorrow that threatened to pull her under. Voices wailed in agony, memories of anguish clawing at her mind. "No. I will not fall." Layla gasped, fighting against the tide, her fingers instinctively gripping the sphere tighter. The orb pulsed in her grasp, reproducing the light of 1,000 lost souls. In that instant, she realized her strength. She was not just a vessel, she was the revival of hope itself. Filled with newfound determination, she raised the sphere high, sending ripples of light bursting forth. It cascaded around her like a crystal waterfall, bathing the chamber in its brilliant glow. "Together, we can chase the dark away," she called, her voice resonating through the ethereal space. The shadows hesitated, quaking against the light, uncertainty creeping into their depths, but then, an ominous rumble echoed from the void. The shadows recoiled, revealing glimmers of twisted figures emerging from the darkness. Layla squinted, trying to pierce through the chaos, her heart pounding against the rising fear. With a scream, the entity materialized fully, a grotesque amalgamation of faces twisted in despair, eyes hollow and lifeless. "You think this light will save you?" It croaked, its voice a cacophony of anguish. "You do not yet know the horrors you awaken." The revelation struck Layla like ice water. It wasn't just their past feeding this entity, it was a product of their own history's betrayal, sorrow, and silent screams. She had unwittingly tapped into something far deeper, intertwining her spirit with a wound that was never meant to be reopened. "No." She gasped, the truth splitting open her heart like a raw wound. "I have to face it. I can't back down now." But a flicker of doubt crawled into her mind. How could she fight against the weight of generations of suffering? Was there truly a way to heal what was so irrevocably broken? The thought was a poison that twisted her resolve. As she hesitated, the shadows surged again, overwhelming her with a new wave of chilling despair that made her feel small, insignificant against the tide of darkness. Just as she braced for impact, the very ground beneath her began to tremble. The veil between the realms thinned, and ancient whispers rushed in, those of spirits long forgotten, begging for release. "Do you hear them?" Layla cried out, the shadows shifting with every plea. They want to be understood, not bound in despair. But was she prepared to handle the truth that loomed? Would this fight tear her apart or forge her anew? The air grew thick with intensity as the boundaries of light and dark seemed ready to shatter. Layla's breath caught in her throat, realization dawning. To reclaim the light, she had to confront the darkest parts of herself. In that moment of clarity, she steadied her resolve. The next step could either illuminate the path forward or plunge them all back into eternal night. But was she ready to take it? Her pulse raced wildly as she prepared for the confrontation ahead. What horrors would she uncover? Could she unlock the chains of despair, or was this a fight doomed from the start? The night fractured, mere seconds stretching into an eternity. Layla's soul vibrated with urgency as she stood on the precipice of a reality that demanded confrontation. The entity loomed larger, an embodiment of the pain she knew all too well. Echoes of her own broken past swirled in its darkness. "Face me!" She shouted into the void, her voice stronger than she felt. "I will not let this fear control me." With that declaration, the shadows recoiled, surprised by the fire ignited within her soul. Whoever she was no longer just a curious woman seeking to taste forbidden secrets. She was a beacon forged in the heat of ancestral anguish, a bridge between the living and the lost. Images flared in her mind, a child's laughter suffocated by silence, a mother's warmth lost to despair. Layla pressed her palm against the radiant sphere, absorbing each narrative that surged through her veins. It pulsed with a life of its own, fusing her truth with the truths of the past. "What do you want from me?" she roared, allowing her fear to swell into defiance. "You think I'll cower? I carry your horrors and your light. I am more than just flesh. I can rewrite this story." The entity recoiled, its form wavering under the intensity of Layla's resolve. "You believe yourself special? You're merely repeating mistakes." But even as it spoke, a crack of vulnerability shone between its many faces, a fleeting glimpse of fear hiding behind centuries of rage. "Then let us uncover the truth together." Layla pressed, her heart racing like wildfire. "Let the past speak. I will listen." With each declaration, she could feel the weight of the spirits encircling her, warming her with their collective strength. They surged forward, dissolving her doubts and fears into ash. The shadows shrieked as the orb of light expanded, illuminating the dark corners of the entity's heart. "You cannot escape the consequences of your ancestors' crimes." It hissed, but for the first time, its confidence wavered. "By tapping into this, you risk losing it all." Desperation mingled with recklessness, but Layla knew what was at stake. It wasn't only her battle, but a reckoning for every soul bound in the darkness. With renewed determination, she took a deep breath, allowing the stories to flood her, each memory binding her with purpose. "Then allow me to bear this weight," she cried. "For the suffering you hide, I will not turn away. Show the world your pain, and let it be heard." The shadows writhed like a living entity, torn between binding her or breaking free. A blast of cold air whipped through, but it was suffused with a rush of warmth and clarity. Layla felt the prism of light grow even more brilliant, illuminating the tortured, ghostly faces surrounding her, each etched with stories aching to be told. "Together!" she yelled, raising the orb high. "You want release? I will unleash every forgotten word." As soon as she spoke, the air hummed with anticipation. The shadows crystallized in a desperate attempt to cling to their power, but the chanting of ancient sorrows rose, echoing all around them. "Freedom!" Layla invoked, her voice a powerful fire setting forth across the void. The energy surged through her body as she felt each spirit entwined in her essence, pressing their truths against her heart. "Release! Speak your stories!" The shadows convulsed, resisting her words, but the orb glowed fiercely, forcing its way through the veil. Channels of light weaved a tapestry of history, unveiling the profound grief and longing within the entity. With each layer peeled back, the likeness of her mother flickered through, guiding her. A thunderous roar erupted within the entity, a haunting lament that seemed to shake the very foundations of the realm. "You cannot rewrite the past, we are eternal and all-consuming." Yet, as Layla's heart surged with each soul intertwined with her, she felt echoes of strength triumph over despair. "Then together we will reshape the truth." She flourished, voice piercing through the storm. As she clutched the radiant sphere, a blinding light erupted that sent shockwaves through time. Layla's eyes widened as the prison of shadows shattered like glass, a brilliance pouring through that absorbed every ounce of anguish, lighting the night with a spectrum of hope. The entity howled in anguish. "What are you?" Its voice trembled, losing definition against the waves of memories crashing around it. "I am a daughter, a vessel, and a bridge," Layla proclaimed. "Not just of sorrow, but of healing." The light exploded forth, each spirit released, merging into arcs of energy, weaving their stories through her. She felt them alive, unbound, shouting their grievances, their losses, and their glimmers of joy piercing through the dark. One last anguished scream echoed as darkness twisted and writhed, finally dissipating into nothingness, leaving Layla standing surrounded by ephemeral spirits filled with gratitude. "You have freed us." As the shimmering faces began to fade into the ether, Layla felt a profound loss and the weight of ancient burdens lifted from her shoulders. She stood quietly as the last remnants of lingering shadows evaporated, replaced with warmth she wouldn't dare forget. Yet, as the stars winked above and dawn kissed the remnants of night, a soft breeze carried a whisper. "Remember us. Remember our stories." Kayla nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I promise." As the last echo of their pleas softened, she felt a sense of closure. It was a bittersweet parting. The winds of fate had shifted, and she would forever bear their tales into the world. With a heavy yet hopeful heart, Layla stepped away from the remnants of her past, ready to embrace a future that beckoned new beginnings and joyful memories. The shadows no longer held her captive, she had faced them and emerged reborn, and just like that, she carried forth their truths, determined to bind the echoes of history with the vibrant color of life. The end, and yet, perhaps only the beginning. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion, and be sure to immediately share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Don't wait even one more second. Your support keeps this journey alive.